And the two leaders seeing eye to eye on fighting illegal immigration and violent crime. President Trump meeting today with the president of El Salvador. This as they're saying they're not going to be sending deported criminal aliens back to the United States despite pressure from courts. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him.
An illegal immigrant deported back to his home country, El Salvador, is not coming back to the U.S. That's what Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele told President Trump today at an Oval Office meeting. Bukele has become a strong Trump ally for taking in hundreds of alleged illegal criminals deported by the U.S. into his country's mega prison.
And you are helping us out, and we appreciate it. Thanks.
Bukele is known for cracking down on gangs and drastically lowering crime in his home country. He says to Trump,
"You have to imprison them so you can liberate 350 million Americans that are asking for the end of crime."
Bukele's indication that he's not sending back Kilmar Abrego Garcia comes as the Trump administration has been defending the man's deportation in courts and in public. The U.S. government deported Garcia back to El Salvador despite a court order saying he might be subject to harm there. While his U.S. citizen wife says he's not a gang member,
this so-called administration error has destroyed my family's happiness.
White House officials say he is, and that a Supreme Court order to facilitate his return does not mean that they must get him back.
If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plan.
That neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls.
And now President Trump eyeing to send more illegal criminals to El Salvador.
As many as possible.
And potentially even criminals who are U.S. citizens.
They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too. And I'm all for it. We're studying the laws right now.
Meanwhile, on tariffs, President Trump on Monday signaled that he might give exemptions to car parts.
Because they're going to make them here. But they need a little bit of time.
That's after the government over the weekend spared electronics like smartphones and computers from its 145% tariffs on China.
I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible. We lost with China over the Biden years trillions of dollars on trade.
And President Trump also says that tariffs on pharmaceuticals and semiconductors are coming soon. The vice president warning today that the U.S. must have what we need if, God forbid, we had to fight a war. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Just prior to the Salvadoran president's White House visit, the United States deporting 10 more alleged gang members to El Salvador's maximum security prison. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
The U.S. deported 10 alleged Venezuelan and Salvadorian gang members to El Salvador this weekend. That's just before the president of El Salvador paid a visit to the White House. Secretary of State Marco Rubio made the announcement on Sunday, saying the move shows security and prosperity in the hemisphere. The deportees were booked into the notorious Terrorism Confinement Center, where their heads were shaved, and they were taken to prison cells. Last month, the Trump administration struck a deal with El Salvador to pay $6 million to hold around 300 alleged gang members for 1 year. Now, the Trump administration has already sent roughly 260 deportees there, but there's still thousands left to deport.
There are thousands of either trained Nicaragua members left in this country or their affiliates and associates. So obviously some portion of those will be going to El Salvador as part of our effort to eradicate this foreign terrorist organization from the United States. But there's no upper limit to the agreement. We're going to continue to send foreign terrorist aliens to El Salvador as well as to many other countries.
The U.S. has designated both the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua and the Salvadorian gang MS-13 as terrorist organizations. Now, this allows the U.S. to deport illegal immigrants that are part of these groups without a legal process. The Trump administration said that the gang members are conducting a form of modern warfare. And with Tren de Aragua in particular, they're accused of working with the Maduro regime to infiltrate the U.S. to commit crimes. Both gangs have long been linked to multiple murders, theft, and drug and human trafficking. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
So to what extent can courts influence foreign policy when it comes to deportations? To discuss the El Salvadoran president's visit here in the United States and what it means for immigration policy, we welcome Jessica Vaughan, Director of Policy Studies at the Center for Immigration Studies. Jessica Vaughan, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Jessica, President Trump hosting El Salvador's President Bukele today at the White House. This coming as the administration is using El Salvador's mega prison to house illegal immigrants deported from the U.S. How significant is this meeting at this moment?
Well, it's very significant for a couple of reasons. One is that President Bukele's cooperation on this issue of taking Venezuelan and Salvadoran gang members who have been designated as terrorists is really helpful to us because, for example, the government of Venezuela has not been cooperative in accepting these violent criminals back to their home country. But it's also important because it helps the public see that this issue, which has become embroiled in the courts in the United States, is really fundamentally a foreign policy issue and clearly within the purview of the president to work out. And it kind of highlights how much of a problem it could be if the lower courts continue to try to dictate how the Trump administration deals with certain gang members who've been designated as terrorists, and this would also apply to Mexican cartel members and a few other transnational criminal organizations. And so this could potentially affect the way that these cases play out in the U.S. courts. And frankly, a lot of analysts think that the courts have no business in ruling for the United States to bring back this one particular gang member who was removed to El Salvador, who's been found by two courts to actually be an MS-13 member and is now no longer eligible to stay in this country.
To your point, Jessica, there have been several legal challenges surrounding the president's deportation efforts. How do you assess the legality of these nationwide injunctions?
Well, these are extraordinary measures that have been taken by the Trump administration to address an extraordinarily serious and unprecedented problem, which was the influx of illegal migrants over 4 years, numbering more than 8 million people. And for the courts to step in here and try to dictate whether or not the president can first of all designate groups as terrorist groups or as part of a predatory incursion in cahoots with another government like Venezuela, and then how they're going to deal with that is very, very unusual. And we've seen the Supreme Court already kind of slap down the lower courts and say, look, you can't stop foreign policy or other policies in this way. You need to back off a little bit. And one particular judge, the one involved with this Maryland case of the MS-13 member, ignoring the Supreme Court's instructions to back off somewhat. So this is really a new issue in this separation of powers situation that we're finding ourselves in now.
Now, something else that's a pretty big change on the border. President Trump on Friday authorizing the military to take control of land along the border there in the south. The order says that the Department of Defense should be given the jurisdiction to federal lands. To what extent has our military been involved at the border in the past? And how big of a change do you think that this particular order is?
Well, the military has been involved many, many times in helping secure our border, and it's always been in a support role to help the Border Patrol by keeping watch on the border, by building infrastructure, by helping with transportation and providing bases. So this is nothing new. And in fact, this strip of land that President Trump has directed to be turned over to the Department of Defense's control has, always been considered to be there for border security. And this order he's given today is simply saying that it's the Department of Defense that's going to take the lead on this. This is necessary for our national security, and we can expect to see them building some more barriers and other infrastructure that's going to help keep our border secure.
Jessica Vaughan, thank you.
Thank you.
Harvard University officials today rejecting the Trump administration's demands to make sweeping changes to its governance, admissions, and hiring practices. Harvard is the first school to push back against the government's efforts to bring about changes, and it has the most funding to potentially lose at stake. The Trump administration announcing recently it was reviewing $9 billion in contracts and grants for the Ivy League university. The requested changes come after intense protests last year over the Israel-Hamas war, fueling concerns over anti-Semitism on campuses. Other changes relate to ending DEI programs and topics surrounding gender identity ideology. A judge has denied bail for the man accused of setting the Pennsylvania governor's residence on fire. The Sunday blaze causing significant damage and forcing Governor Josh Shapiro and his family to evacuate the home.
Reporting a large fire in the dining room on the first floor. They can see fire out the windows. G5, it sounds like you're on fire.
But we do know that this attack was targeted. We don't know the person's specific motive yet, but we do know a few truths. First, this type of violence is not okay.
Shapiro said they were awakened by state troopers pounding on their doors at about 2 a.m. Sunday. No one was injured. Authorities said Cody Balmer scaled a nearly 7-foot-high iron security fence, eluded officers, and forcibly entered the residence before setting it on fire with Molotov cocktails. Police said the 38-year-old suspect appeared to have carefully planned the attack and that he was inside the residence for about a minute before escaping. According to court documents, Balmer told police he had planned to beat Shapiro with a hammer if he had encountered the governor while inside. President Trump condemned the attack. Balmer's mother told CBS News that he had reached out to police before the incident. She told the outlet, quote, he was mentally ill, went off his meds, and that is what happened. Balmer faces charges including attempted murder, terrorism, aggravated arson, and aggravated assault. Republican lawmakers pushing back as Democrats accuse them of working to cut benefits from Medicaid and Social Security. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more.
Over 100,000 residents right here in AZ06 would lose Medicaid coverage. They better be afraid of the reaction of the regular people in AZ06 and other districts like it around the country if they don't start standing up to Donald Trump and fighting for health care and Social Security.
They're cutting Medicaid in order to finance tax cuts for the wealthiest people who are also engaged in market manipulation right now.
Despite the accusations, Republican leadership in the House and the Senate maintain their commitment to protecting people's benefits.
Have said that we're going to gut Medicaid. It is not true. We're going to protect the benefits that everyone is legally entitled to.
We are all aligned on the need to make the 2017 Trump tax cuts permanent, to restore American energy dominance, to grow our economy, and to make a generational investment in our border security. And also,
Republicans in the House and in the Senate have also joined Democrats to push for legislation that will provide congressional oversight over the president's tariff policies.
Let me just say that I support the president 100% when it comes to the critical goals that he's talking about: onshoring, critical manufacturing, growing American jobs, ensuring fair trade, and making sure that markets abroad are a good place for the sale of U.S. goods. I just think we need to make sure we do it in the right way. And Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution is clear on this. Congress has the power to impose tariffs.
Congress is in recess until April 28th. Republicans will then have less than 1 month to pass a reconciliation bill before their own self-imposed Memorial Day deadline. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
And turning our attention now to the West Coast, earlier today, a 5.2 magnitude earthquake rattling across Southern California this morning. Governor Gavin Newsom's office says the tremor was felt from San Diego to Los Angeles. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the quake was recorded at around 10 a.m. this morning near Julian, California. Experts said the tremor was preceded by a foreshock Sunday afternoon. So far, there's no immediate reports of widespread damage or injury. The National Weather Service issuing a statement saying there was no threat of a tsunami. Local authorities are coordinating with the state of California to assess any damage. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.